So yesterday, the Wheel of Time Season 2 trailer dropped, and I posted a reaction video, and the overwhelming feeling I hope that conveyed was that I'm excited. Even if maybe I was a little bit muted, I just thought this trailer didn't have the emotional impact that the Season 1 trailer did. I think this is a better trailer overall, but just there's nothing can beat that Season 1 hype we all felt, how excited we were back then. And so yeah, what I've got here are the still images up on my computer, which you can't see because it's in front of me and below the camera. And I'm gonna pick a couple of images here, talk about them, and then mostly what I'm gonna cover here are how I feel about certain elements of the show, which have improved from Season 1, just visually speaking. I can't say anything about the writing because we don't have the show available to watch yet. But yeah, I've noticed just watching this trailer and looking at these stills, there is a noticeable visual upgrade, which I believe many of my other creators have also pointed out, and we were definitely talking about it on Twitter as they were giving us those kind of puzzle piece images to get a couple of little short scenes from the trailer the day before it dropped. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. One of the first ones I want to call out, and that just really stands out to me visually speaking, is Egwene here channeling in the tower. She's practicing. She's in her accepted, or novice? Novice. Oh, look at me catching myself. She's in her novice dress. 90s in the accepted test. So Egwene is in her novice dress, and she's practicing channeling. So and we can see in here that the materials on the costumes seem to have a little bit more texture to them than they did in Season 1. And I know a lot of people who were complaining about things in the show in Season 1 often pointed at the costumes. They're too clean, they're too new, you know, they don't look worn, yada yada, whatever reason. I still think they look clean in this one, and that never bothered me. But I think the material texture has improved quite a bit, and we can see that on some other costumes as we start looking a little bit deeper and get some close-ups. The other thing about this particular image that I really enjoyed is that Egwene is channeling, and she's got multiple weaves going on. It looks like she's got a golden weave here, which I believe is air, and then there appears to be, I can't tell if this is green or gray, to be completely honest with you. The images I'm working from are from YouTube, so they're hyper compressed already, and then they're like 720p. So we won't know until we get the full 4K release from Amazon. But yeah, she's got multiple weaves, so we've got weave colors here, and the VFX is another area where I think they have really stepped up their game. I think that most of what we've seen in the little tidbits we've had up to the trailer release has been better overall, and I definitely believe that the trailer is showcasing some better visuals. One area that I'm still iffy on is the lighting. I know that for a lot of folks, the lighting seems a little flat, especially for production of this size, and that does not necessarily do their stage design a lot of favors. And I mean, I could kind of agree. I'm not the biggest like visuals person. I mean, I like cinematography, don't get me wrong. Got a camera and everything with changeable lenses. But at the same time, like when I'm watching a show, I'm not usually focusing on like what's behind my characters when they're talking, especially if we got close-up scenes. Now, this is another thing that the Wheel of Time in Season 1 didn't do a whole lot of, was this close-up on a character's face, close-up on the other character's face, and then cut back and forth as they converse with this really heavy bokeh depth of field effect. That's very Game of Thronesy, and I think they intentionally didn't do that. But the converse of that is a lot of people who are bothered by flat lighting or weird background lighting on the stage and set design notice that a little bit more because it's not blurred out now. It's harder to fix in like post with color correction, stuff like that. So yeah, I think a lot of people were disappointed in the kind of flat look of Wheel of Time Season 1. For me, not a big deal. Again, I can look at it, point it out, pick it out if I'm stopping, but when I'm watching the show, it doesn't diminish my enjoyment of it. And I think in this regard, like here, Egwene is clearly in the tower. We've got like a statue of an Aes Sedai in the background here, flat stonework floor. again, this is a compressed image. There's a lot of artifacting going on back here. It's hard to make out specifically what's happening. So in the background. So I don't know what this room is like cut from stone. Like say they Ogier stonemasons and they literally cut it from like bedrock or something. Hard to say. So, but for me, this looks pretty good right now, though it is kind of weird that she's apparently like it's in a room, a stone room. So it could be the basement maybe somewhere. And there's like a spotlight kind of coming down on her. And yet there are torches in the background, and you can see that the lighting is not matching the lighting in the foreground. So this is one area where I definitely think folks who have those issues with this show are still going to have those. I'm reserving judgment until I see more of the show in motion. It could be that, they go in for some final color correction here in this last month or so. So yeah, again, that stuff doesn't bother me that bad, but I just want to call it out so people can't be like, oh, you're just a shill, you like everything about it. Yeah, some things that bother you don't bother me, and things that bother me don't bother you, and the things that I enjoy, you might not enjoy, so we're different. If I'm not your speed, go find somebody who is. And then this is another shot I wanted to call up for the costuming, and this is of Leandra. We got a close-up of her, and I can really see in this one the detail in the costume. The leatherwork detail is improved. I thought their leatherwork was actually pretty good from season 1, but they've taken it like that step further. This leather, I don't know what you would call it, but it's this on Leandrin's dress here. I feel like this would be in Game of Thrones almost, the quality of it. And then she's got like silken sleeves going down her outfit and what looks to be kind of like a felty, velvety style coat on. And yeah, all of these materials look way better than season 1. The colors are still really good. I really enjoyed the costume colors in season 1. But in terms of the absolute look and texture that I'm seeing here, I think it's a massive improvement. I think the costuming and prop work is going to be next level in this season. Again, the lighting looks a bit better in this scene, but we're also not in the exact same scene. As we all know, they never show us like very many contiguous shots in these trailers. So yeah, I just wanted to call this out here because you can really see the improvement in costuming from this shot. Okay, and here is another one of my favorite shots from the trailer. This is who we very much believe to be Lanfear being awoken by Ishamael. And I have to say, the creep vibes like we get here, the horror vibes, I'm digging it. I kind of wish the show leaned a bit more into this tone and this color, and the lighting in this shot is fantastic. It is not flat. It is properly dynamic for everything that needs to happen, and it logically makes sense. So again, this is like different directors and stuff on the show too, so they all have their own visual flair. But yeah, I loved the scene of Lanfear, and we've seen this before, but I just feel like we have to call it out because it's so epic. The other thing about it that's really cool, actually, is that in the trailer, we hear like creaky sound effects from like Lanfear's like bones, where she hasn't been moving them or using them for a long time. So that's just a nice little like ick factor touch. I think that's going to make a lot of people feel like, ugh, people hate squishy, creaky sounds from bodies. Specifically going to call out VFX, and I'm going to do that using the shot of Rand here in his in bed, where he is seemingly channeling 2 weaves of fire. And my lord, these look better than season 1. You can't tell me this isn't better than season 1. I already thought the VFX in season 1, especially episode 1, were very good. And now we have this weaving with Rand. It's absolutely amazing. I'm just super stoked to see how much more channeling there's going to be, because we know there's not all that much channeling in the Eye of the World. So that lends itself to being kind of more of a standard, like almost sword and sorcery style fantasy, where there's really only one person who uses it right up until the end. So yeah, now that we're going to have our characters YouTube can channel, starting to learn and struggling to control it. I love that they gave us this visual upgrade. It's just, I'm so excited to see it on screen. I was happy with how it was portrayed, at least the fundamentals of it, how it flows, how it moves in season 1. But I was bummed that we didn't get the individual weave colors, and they've definitely corrected that here in season 2. Okay, and time for another shot talking about costuming and textures and stuff like that. We've got this one of Rand and Logain here, which was a total surprise to see in the trailer. I'm glad they're kind of moving their interactions forward. I always felt like Rand and Logain didn't get to interact enough in the book series, and I'm so happy that the show is going to kind of give us that interaction that a lot of fans have said they've wanted for years. It's just going to be phenomenal. But you can see here they're both in kind of like casual clothing, and just looking again at these robes, there's like a pattern on Logain's that we wouldn't have probably seen that in season 1 necessarily, outside of like his super fancy stuff. So this is pretty casual. Then Rand's got one on, and it's got like kind of a little checker thing going along the lapel there, and it's just, I mean, I can see the textures of them through the pictures, even though they're a little, you know, artifacty, and I just think it's such an improvement. And I can't praise the costume team enough. Like, we're still very much in that visual design that Isis laid out for us in season 1, but they've taken that and they've just really upgraded what they were using in that visual design. And I just couldn't be happier with it, you know. I'm a big fan of like how colorful everything is. There's one thing the Wheel of Time is very well known for, and that is its descriptions of clothing and how colorful all the clothing is throughout the series. And I feel like the show is doing a very good job of portraying that. And I also think there's a certain element of the fandom who wants more muted tones and less colorful clothing. And did they just skip entire chunks of the series? Did they not read how long Jordan's been describing clothes? Did they only do it the first time, and every time they've reread, they just skip over every dress or coat? So yeah, I just think that what we have in costuming is appropriate for what is actually written in the books. Some people may not agree with me, but that's my opinion. And I feel like there's text to back it up. All right, next I want to talk about High Lord Turok. That's right, the man, the sword master himself. His costume here is absolutely... I've never seen very many things like this in a fantasy show, especially in modern fantasy. You maybe would get something like this back in the 80s, but you haven't really seen anything this crazy, this outlandish since that time. Everything's kind of tried to be more gritty, more like, we got to make it real, but I'm like, this fits for the Shan because they're an empire of excess, much like ancient Rome or the various dynasties of China, like the Tang Dynasty, which is kind of the peak of classical Chinese civilization. You know, when you have a wealthy empire, the empires push affluence out to their highest social strata. And yeah, Turok is of the blood. We know that. He's directly related to the Empress, and they share a common ancestor going very far back. So yes, this makes sense for the Shan. The thing that's kind of weird are the scarification going on Turok's head up here. That's not something that I necessarily recall being described. The closest thing I think is like Sharon's had tattoos. In the at the end of the series, we found out that the Sharns had tattoos, and the more tattoos you got, the lower down in social strata you went. So it could be that they are combining some elements from Shara to the Shan just to compress those storylines, because we really don't. I mean, the Sharns are a take it or leave it thing for a lot of fans, right? Like, Brandon wanted to work them in the last book, but it did feel very sudden and kind of out of nowhere. So I get that, especially since we'd been hearing about Shara for so many books. Like it offhand mentions and then some direct conversation about it, but we'd never really knew much about it other than it was mysterious. And now we're, if they move some of that over to the Shan-Chan, I'm okay with it. We can cut them out as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the material qualities here look great. Clearly, there's some leather going on, leather work here, and then they've done a good job making this like kind of antler-esque thing or rib cage that adorns Turok's shoulder pads. Looks very much like antlers, the material. It's very close, and they've done proper like coloring on it. It even looks like, they've even dipped some of these tips in gold. So, that just speaks again to the excess of the Shan-Chan. And another thing, it's not necessarily costuming or visual related, but Turok kind of speaks with an American accent, which is very thematically on point. I'm kind of happy to see that. Whether or not we'll actually see that, we won't know how the Shan-Chan truly speak until we get further into season 2. But he definitely sounded American. With some of his enunciation there, so I'm excited to see how it's going to go. Let's see, what else do we have? I can go on and on and on, but I really just wanted to take and pick a couple of images here and there and just highlight how I think it's improved from season 1. There is one more I want to talk about. All right, I'm scrolling through my folder here while I'm recording this. No plan, just kind of off the cuff, just enjoying myself. And boom, we have Aviendha like using a white cloak in their shield as kind of a vaulting mechanism here to further kick more white cloak ass. So that's fantastic. This shot is just amazing. It was called out on the Dusty Wheel yesterday, and for good reason. It's a fantastic shot. The entire little clip there with Aviendha fighting the white cloaks is really cool, and I'm excited to see that they're not having our Aiel actresses and actors shy away from physicality. Obviously, I'm sure they do have stunt doubles who do some of the most intense stunts, but it'll be cool if our Aiel cast will be performing a number of their stunts and fight sequences themselves. Especially in light of, Tom Cruise doing everything in Mission Impossible, him being like pushing 60 and doing the craziest crap he's ever done in his life. So yeah, it'd be cool to see that kind of come back in. The more practical you can make shooting, the better in my book. Another reason I don't hate on the sets so much is because many of them are real. Like they built them, and they're never going to look the like CG-esque way that folks are now accustomed to seeing things. Because there's no way to do that. So like Star Wars is shot essentially all on like blue screens, and then it's done in Unreal Engine, and yeah, here they're physically building sets, so there's going to be some differences and things like that, some imperfections. Maybe a color they chose to paint something doesn't light quite right compared with the rest of the scene and whatnot. Whereas if you were shooting with something in engine, you can tweak that even after the fact because it's a 3D render that is just kind of superimposed. So yeah. Anyway, y'all, I loved this trailer. Again, not as emotionally impactful, but there are numerous things I'm happy to see, and many of them directly relate to the story beats of The Great Hunt, Book 2 of the series, which is my personal favorite book. I'm very happy to see that all of the most important things from The Great Hunt are making it in. And that just makes me think that the book they chose to gut most of was probably The Dragon Reborn. I mean, it's an important book. Don't get me wrong, but it's a chase book, and The Great Hunt was a chase book, and we had just done it, and Rand is absent through all of The Dragon Reborn, and while we get great development for Perrin and Matt, and then some further development for Egwene and her crew, we need to really be establishing Rand a little bit more. So I think you can definitely take those, and with all the characters split, give that same kind of feeling, because they're not all together. And that was the whole point of The Dragon Reborn. They start and they're all in different places, except for Rand and Perrin. They're in the same place, but then obviously Rand runs off in The Dragon Reborn, and Perrin and Moiraine and crew have to chase him down. And that's the whole crux of that book, is Rand is missing. Well, he's already missing from the end of season 1, so boom, problem solved. You don't have to worry about that plot point of The Dragon Reborn. So, yeah, I think from everything I've seen, they probably have done a really good job of taking those books and mashing them together, because there's not very much that you couldn't mix in there. And I think that it's just going to pay off in spades later on. And if we don't get the Stone of Tear, I get it. It kind of sucks, folks. But I would rather that stuff be pushed later, because it definitely came way too soon in the books. I mean, how many times have we said Rand pulled the sword from the stone, then he put the sword back in the stone and didn't touch it for 6 more books? Or even longer. So, yeah, it's fine. It's fine to push Kalendor and Stone of Tear stuff out. It does not bother me. It was such a... it was such a crazy thing. That's they built this whole sword in the stone up. Kalendor, they built it up, and he just walks off and leaves it. We see this happen a little bit repeated through the series. Important thing, legendary item, we'll come back for it later, because if they just carry it with them the whole time and then they use it, it's easy mode at that point, right? So kind of throwing them away until they're needed again makes a little bit of sense to keep the story interesting. Anyway, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video here. I really appreciate you for coming in, sticking around with me, talking some Wheel of Time. I'm super excited. I haven't been this excited in a long time. It's been a hot minute. For those of you who followed me previously, you'll notice things are different. I moved house over the last 8 months since I made a video. So this is the new setup for now. I'm in my basement. And yeah, it's also part of the reason why I didn't make videos for so long, because I was busy moving. Settled in, got stuff, got the shelf set up, got furniture in the house finally. So things are good, life is good, and Wheel of Time in about 44 days. So see y'all then.